Hello and welcome to another episode of Growing Up B2B. I'm your host, Delia. I'm the second generation president of Delia Associates, the place where B2B brands go to grow. I'm really excited to introduce our guest today. He's Mark Kenah, president of Albert Paper Products. Albert Paper Products is a family-owned packaging company based in Irvington, New Jersey, specializing in custom folding cartons and packaging solutions for the beauty, pharmaceutical, and food industries. With now over 80 years of experience, the company is known for its commitment to quality, innovation, and highly responsive customer service. Mark, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Ed, for having me.
Hey, major milestone. Albert Paper just celebrated 80 years. That's incredible. What does that legacy mean to you?
I tell you, Ed, it means quite a bit. I started now probably close to 28 years ago, and when I first started, we were much smaller. We were still a packaging firm at that point, but much smaller. And to be able to start with my grandfather, with my father here as well, we'll talk a little bit more about that, and to have him guide me along from the beginning, and some other family members in and out, but to really stay in it for 4 generations is really quite something. It's something that I'm proud of. It's something that my father is quite proud of, obviously. Other family members, and something that my 7-year-old son is quite proud of. He's getting very interested in the paper industry already. But yeah, so no, it's very prideful. I try to, put it out there as much as I can, because once again, we're a dying breed. And so to be able to let people know that we're still here and thriving is something that I really relish.
Awesome, awesome. So now your great-grandfather was Joseph, right?
That's correct. That was my
Okay.
great-grandfather, yeah.
Okay. Now, have there been any stories about Joseph that have been made it down to you that have been passed down over the years? What kind of guy was he?
I tell you what, I mean, not so much about my great grandfather. I don't have, it's more of the stories that I have is about my grandfather per se. So my great grandfather, Joseph Kenah, like you said, he started the company in 1944. He was working at that time at Westinghouse, a bulb factory in Bloomfield, New Jersey.
Okay.
And so he was working there. He was involved in purchasing. He was a purchasing guy there. And he saw a chance to start a business because Westinghouse was outsourcing a lot of their advertising and mailings and promotional pieces and supplies back then. He saw an avenue, and he decided to go on his own and start his own business. And he started that business named after his 2 sons, Al and Bert. So people don't know that. Albert Paper comes from my grandfather and my great uncle, his brother.
Oh, wow.
So my great grandfather, yeah. Not many people know that. I still have people this day still calling up asking for Albert, and then there never was an Albert. There was an Al and a Bert. And yeah, so my great grandfather started the business, and it was basically just a storefront in East Orange. And he did it basically for his 2 sons to when they came back from the army in the war, that they would have something to come back to. My grandfather was in France, and my great uncle Bert was in the South Pacific for the war. So they came back, they joined up with their father, and they entered the business, and they grew it into a mailing and a package supply and distribution company. And they moved it into another larger location in East Orange. And that's when it really started to really take off. They started to buy production equipment 50s. So in the 1950s is really when we started to get into the manufacturing end of it, as opposed to just more of the distribution. And then we started to add some corrugated and folding equipment, and then eventually moved to an even larger place in Main Street in East Orange. So the company just kept growing from there. And once again, so through the 50s and 60s and 70s, they continued to add more die cutters and folder gluers. And then in 1963, the business moved over into North Newark, New Jersey. And it remained there for, gosh, probably 20 years or so. And then it was, I forget what year, that my father and my Uncle John came into the business then. And they came in, I was after the war as well. So after Vietnam, they came and they joined the business. And my father to this day is still involved. My father actually turned 80 yesterday or 2 days ago.
Oh, wow.
And is still involved. He's been here over 50, 55 plus years. So he still has a couple of things, select accounts that he gets involved in, and he does his thing there. But it was great. It was when I first started in 97, and I believe my grandfather was still here, like I had mentioned, and within his last year. And so to be able to come in at his end there and kind of learn it from him. I got on the road and I drove around with him and to his sales. So it was exciting. I have some great stories with my grandfather at his end of the company.
That's pretty uncommon to be able to actually overlap. So you overlapped a little bit with your grandfather. That must have been pretty remarkable. I'm just trying to even imagine that as a
It was, and I still to this day will come across somebody who dealt with my grandfather years ago,
really, really.
and you think about that. And my grandfather was he was a very dry individual, okay? What a businessman. But the respect that he had from everyone, from his peers and his customers and his vendors, like I said, I still hear conversations or have get involved in conversations to this day
Yeah.
revolving around him. So it's he was very well respected. So it'd be like I said, at that point in 97, 98, when I began, I learned the sales end of it a little bit with him on the road before I came inside and got embedded in here to learn the business inside out.
Yeah. What do you think it was about him that commanded such respect among his peers?
Oh boy, I tell you, everything from his stature to his business acumen to his knowledge of paper and packaging. It was all encompassing. It was, I think, I have very fond memories of my grandfather. We're very big Giants fans, New York Giants fans. So me and him, I've gone to many games with my father, but it was my grandfather many years ago he and I used to go to all those games together. So we had that bond really, I think, even before I began here. But yeah, it was, I think, just a little bit of combination of everything I just said there is what kind of
Mm.
demanded his respect. He was no nonsense, but very fair.
Take me back. You started in 97, but clearly it sounds like you had exposure to the business before that. What are your early memories of, hey, I've got this family business called Albert Paper that's surrounding this
Right.
family?
Yeah, it's funny too, because I was talking to, I have a pressman out there now, Juan, who's been with me for 43 years, actually. He's retiring this year, and
Gosh.
he's been one of my best die cutters out there. And so he was just sharing a story with my grandfather with me about my grandfather just the other day, reminiscing. And I do remember I mentioned that we had moved to Newark in 1963, and we remained there for many years. Now I'm 51, so I was born in 74. I remember being there in the late 70s, early 80s when I was younger, just walking around and I remember it as a dark facility. It was much different than of course, this facility here. But I have fond memories of just being there and just hearing the machines, but then really more hands-on. My father would bring home odd jobs for me to do. I don't know if I should say that or not, how legal it was for me to child labor laws, but we're very big into cosmetic and the beauty world in our packaging.
Mhm.
Beauty, food, pharma, and a little bit of everything. Back when I was much younger, I remember my father bringing home some odd jobs for putting lipsticks in a case and doing things and putting them in the boxes that we made. I was very hands-on at a young age and to get involved in it. But yeah, I was always intrigued. I always thought I knew this is the avenue, the path that I wanted to go. I have a brother and a sister that kind of forged their own paths. My sister is a highly successful CPA. My brother is an ex-professional athlete. So he had his lane and he still is in the sports world as well. They never came down the Albert Paper Products lane, but are still very involved in the fact that we talk every week about things we're doing.
Yes.
They never took the dip in Albert Paper, but they really are very involved in just the knowledge of what goes on here.
So if you take me back once more, when did you start to potentially realize in your mind, Mark, hey, this might be my path too? You said it was pretty early on, but like when were you actually starting to say, hey, I think I'm going to do this?
Yeah, it was not soon after college, really.
Okay.
I
Okay.
going in and coming out of college, I didn't. I was a business major in a small liberal arts school, and I knew this is what I wanted to do, but wanted to know that I wanted to do a little bit of something else first. And
Yeah.
out of college, I did a couple other little things, but knowing I don't remember the initial conversation I had with my father or my grandfather really, as far as when I was getting involved. I think he actually approached me, if I remember correctly. And so I don't have much knowledge really of how that conversation went down. It was inevitable. I knew I didn't have this one path that I knew I wanted to be. I didn't want to be a lawyer. I didn't want to be a doctor. So I think when I started to do other things, pretty much right away, I knew that's not what I wanted to do, and I wanted to get involved in the packaging end. And it was shortly after I came here, I realized it was pretty exciting. Because whether it's the machines, whether it's your customers, or whether it's your employees, there was so much to wrap your head around. And I'm glad that I did it that way and that I learned it from the inside out. I know I said I started on the road with my grandfather, just driving around and
Yeah.
just hopping into some customers. But really, once that stopped, I came in here and just everything from filing, just cut all the mundane stuff really to eventually making my way and going into the design department and eventually doing designing and working my way up through that way.
Yeah, yeah. Sounds very similar to the journey I took. It's you know it, right? And when I was little, it was collating press kits. Can you come in and collate some? I'm like, how many? Oh, like 250. I'm like rolling my eyes. He's like, what if I get you a Star Wars figure? I'm like,
Right.
sold. That'll get it done.
Exactly right. No, very similar. I'm sure I was bribed in some respect, but yeah, it was once I came in, I knew this is where I wanted to be. But yeah, I was exposed at a very young age and just always had that in the back. I mean, I know whether it's coming home from whether in high school or coming back from college, things like that, I would always come by the facility, stop by.
Yeah.
But yeah, and like I said, it's great. Look at me now, almost say 28 years later, something around there, and to be able to go outside and talk to pressmen out there that predated me by 20 years or 15 years. It's pretty neat.
Absolutely. Yeah. So let me ask you another question. About 28 years in various leadership roles in the company, now leading the company. Along that journey, Mark, did you ever have a what am I doing here moment? Did you ever second guess your path, or were you always pretty confident in the choice you made?
Yeah, no, I don't know if I ever second guessed it. No, I have to be honest with you. And I really, there are days where you want to put your
Sure.
hands up and say, this is it. That just might be just about every day. But who doesn't do that? And the reason for that is just the monotony, the organized chaos that goes on in our everyday lives, whether it's home or whether it's here. I'm lucky enough to have surrounded myself with a really good team in the last number of
Mhm.
years here, which have allowed me to get involved in other parts of the business in the day-to-day running of it. No, I don't think any doubt has ever creeped in. But it's a grind. Every day is a
Yeah.
grind. And the more you grow, the more grind of it is, right? I
Yeah.
said this, I just saying it yesterday. The more we grow and the more bodies we add, it's exciting, right? But it's yet another few personalities to manage, another few positions to open up and lanes to open. Controlling that growth, scaling up at the right time, not too aggressively. All those things I think have led us to where we are today. Our growth was a little bit limited in the last number of years, just by I think the space really. We ran out of space in
Okay.
our facility a number of years ago, and
Mhm.
it limited our growth. And honestly, in hindsight, it might have been a good thing, I think, as well, as odd as that sounds. But with us being able to take over the rest of the building here and add another 35,000 plus square feet in the last few years, it's opened up that capacity. It's opened up new business. It's allowed us to get more machinery. So those problems and those issues and those bottlenecks that we had seem to have alleviated themselves. So it's set us up very nicely for growth.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So we talked a little bit, and it's really remarkable. You were actually able to go out on the sales road with your granddad. How about talk about your dad for a moment? What are some valuable lessons or lesson that you might have picked up from your father?
I tell you, we've worked together from day one, right? I've seen a lot of family business. I've been a part of, when I say part of me, whether they're a customer or a vendor or a friend within the network involved in family businesses. I've seen, and I'm sure how possibly difficult it could be at times, whether it's power, that whatever it may be, right? Thankfully, my father and I'll knock on wood up to this point, have avoided all that.
Okay.
And I credit my father for that, not me, because I'm much more, I don't know if hot-headed is the word, but I reactionary and I'm very passionate about what I do. And not that he's not, but my father is very much like his father in that very mild-mannered, very even-tempered, okay? And that's how he ran his business for
Mhm.
many years. And never too high, never too low. It took many years for me to learn that from my father, okay? Early on, if I had a problem outside, I'd be that guy outside going out and going crazy and where's this way? And it took a long time for me to learn that's no way to run. And at least this company. I can't tell you about the next company, but so my father, like I said, shares the very same similarities. And when you talk to anybody in the industry about him as well, in that just his knowledge, his overall
Mhm.
knowledge, whether it's machinery, whether it's paper, whether it's boxes, whether it's trends. Something that I've always admired about my father is that he's been able to stay a step ahead of the competition or a step ahead of what our gaps might be, whether that's the acquisition of another piece of machinery or a key component to the building here, a new piece of talent for here. Learning from him in the shadows of when to pull the trigger, when to make the right decision, when not to make a decision, that has been the most valuable to me. And really, I took over the day to day. There's no set time really. The day to day, it was pre-COVID. It could have been 5,
Mhm.
6, 7 years ago, somewhere around
Mhm.
there. And my father is still involved to this day. He, like I said, he has his select things that he works on and helps me out and consults me with some things that I need some help on. But having that knowledge in the building is just so valuable. So I think to answer your question fully, though, I think it's his evenness, his ability to approach a situation, a problem, and not get emotional about it. It allows you to make a very rational decision, okay? And when to make that decision. So that's been the biggest thing. But I mean, of course, we've had disagreements, right? Who does?
Yeah.
But I can honestly say that any disagreement that my father and I might have had in the past never really crept into the next day, as shocking as that might seem. Maybe a couple days here and there. And then I show up over the weekend to his house and say hello, and the next thing we're talking about sports or something. But not having that relationship that is just you're able to separate things and realize that everything is not predicated upon this one decision. Okay. You can agree to disagree and then you move on. But I think what has helped also is that my father has never been a power hungry or not. He's allowed people to do their jobs here, okay,
Mhm.
and bestow that and allowed him to people to thrive or not, depending on what your job was. I named a bunch of things, but that have really been beneficial in me getting to this point. But I've had that exposure with my grandfather, but my father clearly was the one who taught me everything I know here. And something that was very important that he kept hammering home that I not fully took advantage of again until recent years is the social aspect of it and the networking aspect. And of course, I have my network and our customers, and we have
Yeah.
120 customers that I've been able to foster over 28 years. Okay. So I'm very proud of that. But there's so much more out there. And
Yeah.
you get very stuck in, you're not stuck, you have who you have. But then organizations like you and I are involved in NJPC or SIBS and things like that, or
Yeah.
have become so beneficial to me personally, as well as the business over the last number of years. I think COVID forced me to get back out there again a little bit. I tell you what, it's just opened up. It's rejuvenated me to a point, really. Just the different events that we go to, that we're a part of, that we just in the NJPC. I got thrust into helping out with in Sando. I'm co-chairing a golf outing. Do I have time to co-chair a golf outing? No, I don't. But you figure it out and you do it, and then you're successful at it, and then your network has expanded so much more, and then you have 15 more friends within that network. And so it really, in the last 5 to 10 years, that my getting more involved in these organizations has rejuvenated me, even in a couple of my salespeople here as well.
Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah.
So you touched on something which is very interesting because conflict resolution is a challenging one in family businesses. And it sounds like with you and your dad, it seems like you just inherently knew where to draw the boundaries. Was that would that be how you'd characterize it, Mark? That you said, okay, business is business, family is family. And when you said you stopped over to the house, you start talking about sports and whatever that business issue was, didn't get brought up or front and center. Like, so how would you characterize the style that you and your dad work through things if you don't agree?
Yeah, I think that what I did was that I saw how successful he was at what he did, how he was able to achieve that in a simplistic manner. Okay. And then in comes me, I say the black sheep of the family. Like even my brother and my sister, everyone is very methodical. I have my hair on fire half the day. And
Yeah.
that's just sometimes how I work. I've learned to get away from that, thankfully. And that is through the help of many years of not of just observing my
Yeah.
father, really. It's just observation. So I think I trusted the process, really. I think,
Mhm.
of course, whether it was a customer, whether it was how we dealt with the customer, whether it was an employee or acquisition of a piece of machinery, whatever it is that we disagreed upon, as much as I might have been a loose cannon at the beginning, I think at the end of the day, I realized that this company has grown to the point because of what he did. And
Mhm.
I trusted that so I think I trusted him to know that, okay, at the end of the day, we completely disagreed on this, but I'll trust you. I trusted
Yeah.
him to until it got to that point where, okay, now I have my own opinions and my own, and that's like I said, coming up to, like I said, whether it was 7, 8 years ago when he wanted to take more of a back seat, okay, and trusted me to make those decisions. And I think that if you look at the trajectory of the business since then, I think I think he's proud to say that to give it to me at that point has been a good decision because once again, in the last 5 years, let's say, we doubled in size. So he got us to a point, right? And then we were able to grow more space, more machinery, and then now we're able to get to the point where we are today. So that conflict resolution, it just was part of our personality, part of the Kenah personality, in that we're most of us are very level-headed, and I think that come the end of the day, if I wasn't so level-headed, I didn't have much of a choice because I knew the next day when I came here, he wasn't going to get it all hot, up and down. He was going to stay just like this.
Yeah.
So I had no choice but to stay like that. And that's how I learned, really.
Got it. Got it. That's great. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
it's amazing how much just by observing the influence of the previous generation. And as you're talking, I'm thinking about some of my early memories of my dad behind the big desk and people are shuttling in and out. And
Right.
yeah, that was cool. He's got all
Right.
these people that are got things going on, and that's neat.
It is. I have a funny story too.
Please.
There was this guy, Jerry, I forget, oh man, I forget what Jerry's last name was, but he worked for my father for forever. Jerry was a dinosaur when I first started working here. And he was with my grandfather for many years. And he was in the corrugated section out there. So he was running some RSCs and some pads out there for me. And here comes this early 20s son of the president, and gosh knows what I was out there running around yelling and screaming, and there was a new customer of mine, and I needed some pads cut, whatever it was, and I went outside to see Jerry, and I knew it was late, and I went out there and I started yelling at it and saying, "Where is this?" And I remember he was up on the machine and he looked down at me and he just looked at me and just gave me the middle finger, and that's all he did. Didn't have to say a word, had nothing, and. So that day, so I was in shock. I didn't know what to do. Yeah, he shut me up real fast. I turned around. I came back in here. And I walked inside my father's office, and I said, "You never believe what just happened." And so I told him, and he was up out of his chair. He went outside to go bananas, and I stopped him though because I was the one at fault. You know, I realized it very soon after. But if this dovetails back around to what I admire about my father and as well. One thing that I didn't put out there is loyalty. All right, his loyalty to his family, his employees, but starting with his family. And I think that was a matter of just his loyalty to not really even knowing the situation, but knowing. And once again, this is a guy who I just completely described, the person who was so even keel and never did. He was out there and ready to go bananas. So I had to bring him back down to earth on that, but it was just very funny. I think that it was a learning lesson for myself as well, that it doesn't matter who I am. I got to get the respect of people out there first. And that kind of started I started on whatever day. That was really the day that I started, was Jerry gave me the middle finger, because I think that kind of brought me back down and realized that I had to work my way up.
That's a great story. Wow. Yeah. So as you said before, you were starting to take on more operational responsibility from your dad. So it almost sounds like the transition into leadership was a bit more organic than, okay, Mark, today's the day you're now the president, I'm stepping down, versus a very formalized transfer of leadership.
It was pretty organic. There was no, and like I said, this dates back many years. I think the title of president wasn't really bestowed until only within this last year, as my father was getting towards retirement. But yeah, no, he was, like I said, he was 55 plus years or so, or 50 plus years as president. But it was, like I said, it was a very organic. It was over years. It was just, and really, to be quite honest, I think what really spurred the day-to-day transition goes far as back as like probably 2018, 2019. But then COVID hits, and it was, I think that was at that time my father realized, okay, this is the time to slow down, and rightfully, like I said, and now here I am and here he is at 80 years old, like I said, and he's still consulting for me and helping me out on different accounts. So he still comes up here and helps out, and he doesn't, paper and packaging was his baby. He's not a golfer. He doesn't own a boat. He doesn't. So his hobbies are is paper and packaging. So
Yeah.
but it was a transition over many years. And look, I mean, you talk about family. My mother, Kathleen, she was and is still is part of the company as well.
Really?
Yeah. So she still is. She is in my HR department. She has been
Oh,
heavily involved in payroll for many years, as well as many other things out there as well. So she is still involved. She's been here, I would say, over 30 plus years as well, 35 plus years. Yeah, there's been many I say many, but family members in and out. When I first started, something I didn't mention was my uncle John Kenah, which is my dad's brother. He was the head of sales. Okay, so he was the head of sales for many years. And when I started, he eventually had to take a back seat for his health, and unfortunately
mhm.
ended up passing away. But no, he was very involved in Albert Paper for many years as well.
Wow. Wow. That's wild. I didn't realize that your mom was in too. Let's talk about the industry you play in. The packaging industry, very competitive, right? Especially when you think about the core industries that Albert Paper predominantly focuses on, being beauty, pharma, and the food sectors.
Right.
How has Albert Paper across the years and now under your tenure maintained its competitive edge in those very challenging, very competitive sectors?
Yeah, there's probably kind of a variety of things, right? We rely very heavily upon our supply chain as well. And within that supply chain is we do a lot of manufacturing here. I do some distribution as well on stuff that I
Okay.
might not be able to handle. So we're relying very heavily upon your supply chain, whether it's the mills, whether it's your die manufacturers, your plate manufacturers, okay, working with them through the years on keeping costs down with them has been crucial to our growth. I lost my train of thought. Your question was
How do you maintain your competitive edge?
the competitive edge. So
Yeah.
the one thing that I packaged ourselves in the last number of years is that we were the chipboard guy, right? We made chipboard, or we run a mill, but we converted chipboard into whatever it was, a pad, a
Right.
box, an insert, a partition, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
And then we morphed into, we were the chipboard, and then you put a couple guillotines out there, and then you put a die cutter, then a folder gluer, and you start to go that way. And so over the years, we morphed into this one-stop shop, okay, for everything tertiary, okay, some secondary and tertiary packaging. So how do my competitive edge from the cost standpoint is doing just that. I sell to my customers the fact that you're coming to a singular vendor for 5 or 6 different components that you might
Mhm.
need within your supply chain. Like
Mhm.
I said, let's just say beauty company A brings me a bottle, okay? And they say, I need just about everything. So I'll grow that out. So we'll get it down the hall to package development. Package development will create a folding carton and have an E-flute liner in there. And we take that folding carton with the E-flute liner and we'll put 3 of those into a chipboard box. And then we'll take that chipboard box and we'll put that into a partition inside a shipper with a top and bottom pad. Whereas you might need 3 or 4 different vendors for that, right? We're unique in that you control your paperboard and your corrugated under one roof. So that value that we add to that, whether in freight being what it is now, right? You're combining all these components that you need to put this fragrance out, and everything's coming from Albert Paper for the most part.
Mhm.
So there's value to you, there's value to the filler, because the filler doesn't want anything until they're ready to go up on the line, right?
Yeah.
So now here it is coming from all one vendor. So really, I position myself, I think, whether it's beauty or food or pharma, in the fact that we're that one-stop shop. So my competitive advantage is in cost, is you're saving quite a bit of cost in doing that,
Mhm.
keeping it all under one roof. Now, does that mean that we're the cheapest in every sort of? No, I can tell you right now, like my folding cartons, I'm not a folding carton company. I don't compete with some of these high-end folding and guys. But do I make folding cartons? Yeah, sure I do. Do I have good equipment? I most certainly do. I'm not downplaying what I do, right?
Mhm.
I have orders from folding cartons from 10 out to 1 million out there. But it's positioning myself with our customers and what our sweet spot is. We might start off just selling you chipboard boxes. But once we get in there and you see and you come and do a tour of our facility, and oh my goodness, they can do A, B, C, and GF too as well. That has been really a feather in our cap. Another advantage that we have recently in the last couple of years, a lot of our customers have come to us and request things to their product to be transit tested. And all we basically have done is just take the product and take the packaging that we make and fill it with their product and send it to a third party lab. So in the last number of years, what I did was I put a lab outside in our facility itself. So we do our own, it's the 1A transit test here, and
Yeah,
and then
really.
supply the customer with a report and pictures. And so now, so Ed, right? So now at the very beginning of the process, so you're getting the
Yeah,
product, you're developing every sort of secondary and tertiary down to the end. All right. And then we supply that whole transit test. So it ties everything together before they go to the retailers or whoever it may be to get it out there. And so once again, are we a transit testing company? No, we're not. And that's not what it, but
yeah,
it's part of our process on the back end that takes that off of our customer's lab
yeah,
and adding that once again, that value. So that just goes once again back to that competitive advantage. It's just listening to the customers, trying to listen to them, react to them, trying to just take another something else off their lap. And we found that in the last number of years, being able to do that is just has been a tremendous help in getting new business, really.
that's awesome. That's
Yeah.
awesome. While a lot of our listeners are involved in family businesses, there are some that are at that beginning of the journey where they're contemplating, do I get involved in the family business or not? So if you were to give somebody, a young person, some advice about how they work through that decision, what might you offer them?
Just patience as that I think each person is their own individual personality. So I can't respond to who their father or their mother or their brother or whoever it is they're getting into business with. I'm very involved in father, sons, and brothers, sisters, businesses, and within packaging or users to this day. And it's not, it can be very difficult and a struggle at times. And
Yeah,
I've been so lucky to avoid that. I mean,
yeah,
really have.
yeah,
Right at it, you could just to be able to come to work the following day and not knowing that whatever was maybe looming over your head is no longer there. Like I said, that's a credit to not to me. That's my father to instill that in me. So now that I can instill that too in my employees here. But patience, I would say, I'll say this as well. You have your mother and your father in the same facility, right, for many
yeah,
years. And I have conversations with my wife about this, and something that I admire from my father so much, and like I said, is loyalty. His loyalty to his wife, i.e., my mother, is second to none that and that you'll ever see. So in all those in my 28 years here, in if I had an issue and there was some sort of issue between the three of us here, I was never okay. And as God is my witness, in 28 years, I was not right once. Okay. So my point of saying patience is that you might not be right. All right. Whether you think you are or whether you are, you're not. So in patience and just getting through that moment, realizing that it's bigger than you. That's what I would say. But there's going to be differences of opinions, and that's okay. That's all right. And it's just a matter of talking things through. So my best thing is patience. Patience with the process, patience with that family member or family members. But I've used the family business moniker as a positive, as a marketing tool like that. It's very
yeah,
rare that you can go out there and scream from the rooftops that you're part of a fourth family run business. It's something that should be applauded. And I'm not by me, but for the longevity of something like that. And especially in this day as well as I too, people consolidate and things
mhm,
happen and things are probably inevitable in any industry, right? But to withstand all that and get to us today here in 2025 and still have it intact, it requires a lot of patience.
yeah.
And so that would be it.
That's a
It's
great,
you're not
yeah,
gonna you're not gonna be right, and just accept the fact that people know more than you. All right.
yeah.
And learn from it.
Awesome, awesome. That's great advice. Looking to the future for a moment, what's coming up on the horizon there? What's either in the industry or at Albert Paper that's exciting you right now, Mark?
Look, we're talking in the mid to late April here, and we all have seen what the market has done, and it's a little volatile out there. So who knows what next week brings, right? But I think we all know that without being too cliche, the sun's going to come up tomorrow, right? Things are going to happen. Things will figure its way out. I'm a little bit frustrated in the fact that I think we've sat around for a year waiting. Okay, we got very used to the COVID level. Everyone was just busy
Yeah,
and bad out of hell. And we all knew that was not going to withstand. And it's come back down to earth, and those levels have, and we knew it would. Luckily for us, it came back down a little bit after other people. Look, we grew in sales almost 20% last year. It's
wow.
a nice thing to hang your hat on, right? But knowing that those inventory levels are eventually going to come back down, and they have, and that's okay. But what's new? What's next for us? Like I said, we were able to expand and get some more room, right? And with that room has increased our capacity to grow. I'm in the middle of purchasing a new machine outside. So we do a lot of slitting, rewinding down from large master rolls down to small, narrow rolls for the food industry, snack food industry. So I have a new machine that we're purchasing just this week to land out there because I'm coming to capacity on that machine. So once again, scary, right? Capacity coming in, but great because I have to invest in a new piece of equipment and investing in that new piece of equipment for some really wonderful customers some really household brands, So there's a lot of exciting things. I just brought on and added on a great new operations manager here who's come on and has really implemented some great procedures. And so it's becoming more just, look, we're growing. That trajectory is like this though. Even though that craziness has tapered off, our trajectory is still going nice. So I have to continue to add to my team and continue to surround myself with some really talented people. I think we've been able to foster within, whether it's on the manufacturing floor in here, just from from within for many years. I think it's important now as we grow and access more machinery that I bring some more skilled people in that have been around some of this packaging for some time. And that's what I've done recently. And I've seen that's been able to open me up in here to do some other things.
Awesome. Final question. If any of our listeners are interested to learn more about Albert Paper Products or learn more about you, what's the best way for them to connect?
Yeah. So one thing with me is that when you start in the sales kind of side, even though I started in the sales and I worked my way back in, but then really was out in the sales, like my customers are always like, I'm there for them.
Right.
Almost to a detriment, almost to the point like that immediate gratification type thing. They reach out to me, I got to get right back to them. I think that being there for them has allowed, once again, more business, but there's only so many hours in the day. But so my point of bringing it up is that I'm always accessible, right? My email address is my first initial last name. So it's mkenah@albertpaperproducts.com. You can reach out to me, email me directly. If it's something that I won't help you out with immediately, I can get you down the hall to package development or to estimating or somewhere along the line. So email me directly. Our website is www.albertpaperproducts.com. And after my meeting here, I have a great digital marketing team that I work with that put a lot of stuff out on our social sites, whether it's Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook. So you can access us on all three of those social sites as well. But as far as the website, probably we're in the midst of revamping that too. Just a lot of exciting things, but you can go through the website, the contact there. I gave you my email address. You can cut through all that red tape and come right to me directly. And I'll be sure to get you in the right person's hands here. But yeah, please reach out. Like I said, with our addition and our growth, we're welcoming new customers. So we're here for you guys.
Awesome. Wonderful. Hey, Mark, thank you so much for joining us today. This is really great. Again, we've been speaking with Mark Kenah, president of Albert Paper Products, and I'm your host, Ed Delia. Thanks so much for joining us here at Growing Up B2B, and have a wonderful day. Hey, Mark, thanks again.
Thanks again. I appreciate it.
Hey, thanks so much for tuning into Growing Up B2B. To explore more episodes and insights, visit podcast.delianet.com. And if you've enjoyed this episode, please give us a rating or review on your podcast platform of choice. Having worked with hundreds of family-led businesses across my career, and being a second-generation leader myself, I'm on a mission to help every family business I meet achieve next-level growth for their organization. So feel free also to connect with me on LinkedIn and let's support each other. You can also find out more about my company at delianet.com. Again, I'm your host, Ed Delia, and thanks so much for joining us today. Take care.